Careful about the...
And letting people in.
Hi, people. Michael is letting you in. Glad to see you here. Those of you who are brave kind of need to be a little bit brave to deal with this particular, I don't even know if I can call it a course of study. It's meant to help you lose your mind, at least in the usual sense. At least it's meant to overcome the barriers of the concrete mind. And tonight, too, I'm going to try a little experiment with the help from my friends Mikhail and Joe. I'm going to play a little music on the theme. So hopefully that's going to work out okay. And we can begin our work. I mean, I don't know. I sometimes think this is the only course of study that I actually prepare for. The rest, I let it come as it comes, but here the subject is so abstruse, and that in itself is an abstruse word that DK's comes up with, you know, that I actually maybe even have to think about what I'm going to say, which is a bit rare. So, yeah, and tonight we'll continue with our look at famine and extreme poverty and malnutrition and all those very unhappy states, not only as they exist in Afghanistan, but in the sub-Saharan areas. There have been extraordinary famines throughout human history, and we're right on the cusp of another one, which is impermissible when you realize that there really is enough food growing in the world to make sure that nobody is subject to those heartbreaking circumstances. People are manipulated over food, you know, and they want power, these manipulators, and they use food as a weapon. You know, for people like ourselves who have an esoteric point of view and know what's intended for the Aquarian age, that kind of attitude is just not acceptable. Well, that'll be a broadcast, and that'll take place, not a long one, you know, because we always have Alexander Ilchuk and Katja Kaufman, Kate Kaufman, with their vigil for the 2025 group at 8 p.m. So we're, you know, I sometimes miss by a couple of minutes, but certainly will try to be completed by that time, and so we can continue to support the restoration of balance in these countries which are so underprivileged in a world which has certainly abundance. So that's just a little tip-off in terms of what we're going to do at 7:20 GMT. It's 10:20 our time here in Finland. And now this is 5 o'clock GMT right now. So, you know, I'm grateful for Mikhail and Joe to give me an orienting hand here when I can't really hear what's going on. And I want to welcome Ann Parker and Annette Ebbett and Antoinette Dutoit and Carl Sarver and Diane Bolbachan, Heike Bobert, Joan Schofield, Karen Gritzka, Leslie Van, and Lori, I think Lori Smith or Butner Smith from the Serious Mysteries. That's how you often list yourself. And let's see, Martine Dupont and Mayra Santos Tia from Washington. We're beginning to look towards Washington right now because of the potential, probably a lesser potential than before, for violence with this get together on the 18th. And Vivian, welcome everybody. Glad to see you here. And as I say, I think you've got to be a little bit brave to go through the kind of stuff that we are working on right now. So you know my method, and we're somehow in the 6th series of Identify as Being, and it's partially lecture and partially meditation, with a little bit of spontaneity thrown in here. So we just come together in the silence, and we may, as we know, seem to be separated geographically, but in consciousness we are one unit, and taking it even further, we are one being. That's where the flip comes, as you begin to realize that one being. So I have a little form of words here that I call identificatory, what a word, identificatory intensity. I, or maybe we could call it infusceptional intensity. Now, as far as we know, the Christ is of our humanity, the great being who has the maximum of that within the earth humanity. It's just, think about it, it's just put so simply, he knew what was in man. So simple. But believe me, if we are face to face with the Christ, we're not going to be able to conceal anything. because he knows what is in man. And usually we are blocked from knowing because our concrete mind and our many glamours get in the way of true knowing. So we can be fooled by what people, let's say, dealing with people, what they appear to be, rather than what they are. The person who can truly identify as others, I use the word as, rather than with, to overcome duality, well, that person can know what is within, let's say, the human being with whom he or she, or as whom he or she identifies. And now, basically, what does that mean? Well, initially, it has to mean that your consciousness is never captured, I put that in quotes, by the details of form. Your consciousness is never captured by the details of form. So think about that for a moment. There are so many little parts and pieces, so many details, and before you know it, that's all that we're thinking about. But that's not correct, as the integration formula for the fifth ray tells us. It's a wonderful section, which basically is always using the mantra, know me, the one who stands behind the form, behind the garment of God. So some people, we try to realize, cannot resist being pulled in by objectivity. If you think about what that word can mean, some people cannot resist being pulled in by objectivity, the particularities of the objects which they register through the senses: eyes, ears, touch, taste, smell. They've just got to know everything about it. And that's good in its own way. But it misses something, which the study of esoteric ontology, maybe I'll use that word now, esoteric ontology, the esoteric art of being or science of being, reveals more. But, you know, the majority of people, they're into what their senses reveal. And not just the outer senses either. There's a difference between subtlety and subjectivity. So there are subtle registrations, but they are not truly subjective. Esoteric ontology. But in addition to this vulnerable condition of not being able to resist being pulled into particularity, there's also the way of, I'm calling it maybe by a peculiar sentence, the way of intensive, form obliterative subjectivity. The way of intensive, form obliterative subjectivity. Now think about that for a few moments. Now this is a different thing. We have this contrast between objectivity and real subjectivity. I don't think we, from the esoteric perspective, I don't think we use the words correctly. So we're talking about now this interesting act or realization called, temporarily at least, the obliteration of the particularities of objective forms. It comes from the heart. That's what I'm proposing. From the doctrine of the heart immovable, immovably upon the factor of life and being. Now, you can't live that way in the world of Mahamaya. You really can't live continuously that way. You've got to develop, we all do, anchoring skills. So there is the doctrine of the heart and the doctrine of the I, or the eyes. The eyes can learn a lot, but never go as deep as the heart can go. So when this happens, the, what can we call it? This act of heart, I can just call it the immobile heart, puts you in another world. Another world in which sameness overcomes particularity. Just imagine that for a moment. I mean, maybe to you it seems a little bit dull. Maybe people say, hey, where's the variety of life? Where is all of my interest in things, in the great number of things and states? But really both are needed, and I'll try to lead us into that realization. It's really hard to sustain this perception, this kind of registration in which sameness overcomes particularity. This is the only way of being what we are forever. Even a universe, and there have been countless, is a particularity. So in short, sameness becomes stronger in consciousness than the registration of particularities. You want to spend all your time noticing differences and combinations and boundaries, okay? Most people do. But there comes a time when you can always do that. That's important, but sameness becomes stronger in consciousness than simply noticing particularities. Now, a little bit about the philosopher Heidegger. Of course, he was brilliant, and he did, through his mistaken idealism, I guess, fall in with the Nazis. It seemed to appeal to him. What they were talking about, of course, the different worlds in which he lived and they lived were astoundingly separate. But anyway, he had a phrase called Dasein, which means basically, like the movie with Peter Sellers, being there. Or there is the being. It's right there, everywhere. It presents itself. It is, and it's there. And, you know, something in me, whether the German is correct or not, I would like to call it hier sein. Being here, not there. You might question, can you have a here without a there? Well, maybe, if we want to get super technical about it. But anyway, hier sein seems to suggest a different type of perception, like it's all here. And taking it further, we are it, and it's all here. Everything is all here, and we are it. And if we go there, wherever there is, might take you to Mercury or Pluto or Jupiter or beyond the solar system, you are it also. But I think it's just as easy to, in our thoughts, to bring what used to be there right here and realize we are that which has been transported from there to here. But if we use our imagination, even that which is way out there is also here. And we are what we discover way out there. There is, well, more on that sometime. There is an all-pervading something. which is really a no thing, a kind of a nothing. There is an all-pervading something which is always let me say, right here, to the point that we are it. That all-pervading something, nothing, or something, no thing. We usually find it easier to talk about something rather than nothing, because the minute we talk about nothing, we've turned it into something. But maybe we can know what we mean here. There is this all-pervading what? Foundation of all somethings. And wherever we are, it is. And it's all right here. Wherever we, quote, go, or in whatever, or in whatever we focus upon in consciousness. Just think about that for a moment. Yeah. So this this something, nothing, something, nothing, is the great equalizer. Think about that. It's the great equalizer. Or maybe using a more unusual word, the great samifier, or samifier. I'm using it that way, if you will. This intangible something, nothing, or basically this no thing, is the great equalizer of all things, the great samifier, rendering them the same. Oop, better spell that. Rendering them the same. Now that's, some people might say, well, oh goodness, that's such a violation. Things are so different from each other. That's true in the Mahamaya, but things are also identical with each other. Now I wonder, maybe Master Moria would ask, can you contain those two apparent opposites, that things are both so different from each other and at the same time equal to and the same as each other? So this samifier, that is always part of us if we can detect it and not get pulled into particularity. Is the enemy of all separateness. And, separateness is the great heresy. That's what he tells us. There's only one great heresy. The Catholic Church has been full of finger-pointing at wrong ways to think that they call heresies, but this is the one great heresy of separateness, and yet it's so common because we live in cyclic Mahamaya. Every time I say Mahamaya, I'm pretty well meaning a universe. And so this has been like going on forever. That's a hard one. I've always said that endlessness is easier to conceive than beginninglessness. Because surely something that is must have begun at a point, but maybe not. And certainly the great Samafire never began. It always was, even though what it has to deal with did have periodical beginnings. Every Mahamaya, every universe, has a particular point of beginning, but not the Samafire. And this Samafire is not like something you have to earn, although you may have to earn the uncovering of it periodically, probably in every universe. There comes a point in the Mahamaya when you say to yourself, well, wait, is everything really as different from each other as it seems? Or is there something else which you can flip into? Change consciousness. No longer use the thoughts, my soul and thine. There was a song, it was called We Are the World. It was a nice, sentimental song. Okay. But this Samafire reveals, in a more esoteric way, that we are the world. And by that I mean the entirety of any universe. Right away, people will say, hey, aren't you getting a little big for your britches there, aren't you? Just taking that too far and inflating yourself? Well, I counter by saying I think that's the way to real humility, and not, excuse me, I'm dropping my mouse here, and not to egotistical inflation at all. We are the world. We are the universe, any universe, all universes, and infinitely more. And no one and nothing. Now this is a good one, I think. No one and nothing can escape being us, what we are, who we are. I can't escape being you. You can't escape being me. That's one of the great mysteries of being. No one and nothing can escape being who and what we are, being the one no thing, which is the source of all things and which we are. Now, obviously, these are just words until they begin to mean something. There are no vacuums. You know, we have the old statement, nature abhors a vacuum. But what does nature fill it with? Well, those vacuums get filled with true selfhood. I'm not just talking about the normal filling of a vacuum. There are no vacuums sufficient to delude or disclude, exclude us. I know maybe there's no such word as disclude, but you get the idea. There are no vacuums sufficient to disclude, exclude us, to disclude, exclude that which we are. Thou art that, you know. The old Vedantic assertion that Shankara said there may be 10,000 books, but they're all on that theme. Thou art that. You can't be kept out. You can't be segregated. You can't be blocked by a wall, so you can't enter. The great same maker, Samaphar, will transcend any wall. And if you think of it, that's what the Christ, on a psychological level, managed to do, to go beyond the wall of separative egotism that any human being tends to present to another human being. You can't be kept out. There is no out. There's somehow only an in. The story of every particularity, who's to count them? Although I think probably they are countable in any universe, although infinite in the series of universes. The story of every particularity in that finitude we call a universe is not only my story, but it's the mystery. And every universe is unique. Sometimes we look at the principles that exist in math and physics and numerology and the fittingness of things in our universe. And we say, well, it's got to be that way forever and for all universes, but maybe it's not. Maybe there's something unique about every one of those countless universes. So the story of every particularity, what's the history and development of that atom, of that cell, of that human atom, or that planetary atom, or solar atom, we call it solar logos, or beyond. It's simply a particularity. What's its story? With what did it interact along the way? Well, these different atoms may be of increasingly great magnitude, but they're just all particularities. And they arose from the sameness, which is pure being, if that can be conceived in a universe, probably the purest of the purest of the pure, when it comes to being, is simply the absoluteness. But in the beginning, this perception or infusception is inconstant. Or maybe what I should call it is perception as infusception. It's not consistent. And you have your good moments and you say, aha, okay. And then it fades away. That's where we are in the beginning. So, and that's why we have the fate of developing isolated unity, which some have questioned, what is it really? And I think it is the ability to isolate wholeness, regardless of how many busy things are happening between the parts. Eventually, isolated unity, which begins a little bit at the third degree and kind of begins to climax at the fifth degree, it captures the presence of every perception, not just the particulars of the perception, but the presence of every perception as the presence. I may be looking at that chair with its wicker construction and its white paint and a cloth skirt and a blue pillow and, a few things that go to make it what it is. But is it, for me, more essentially the presence, or as isolated unity reveals that presence, than it is all of its combined parts? So I highly value in the Mahamaya being able to study and examine anything. That's great, okay, and needed. I wouldn't want a surgeon who didn't know where the organs were and went into some kind of mystical rapture every time he took up a scalpel. Obviously, there's one set of rules for the Mahamaya and another set of rules for determining the reality from which the Mahamaya arose. Now, if I'm successful here, I'd like to play you a song called Isolated Unity. I have a lot of songs, okay, friends. I can get them to you somehow. I got about, 230 songs. And some of them have relevance from the various solar fire rituals. Well, this is from the Leo solar fire ritual, and we were testing it out to see whether you would be able to hear it. And Michael and Joe will tell me whether we may, if we get off to a rocky start, they'll tell me that it's too soft or whatever. But so I'm going to play this sort of 6-minute song for you on isolated unity. And let's see if the music, and you'll see the words too, can help a little understand this profound thing. Sometimes DK says, I wish I didn't have to use a word like isolated unity. But from another point of view, it's profoundly descriptive of what we have to do. So here comes my try to make this happen. And let's just see if I can do it.
Isolated unity, isolated unity, isolated unity. I am that, and that I am. I am that, and that I am. Within the moving form of God, I isolate the whole. I am not this, I am not that, I am myself the whole. Isolated unity, isolated unity, isolated unity. of self has grown and grown, fall erased by spirit's might. Isolated unity, isolated unity, isolated unity. I am that and that I am. I am that and that I am. I am one, yet I am all. The wholeness I embrace. The goal is one with matters fall. Limitation I face. Isolated unity, isolated unity, isolated unity. Is isolated unity the stern privation it would seem? Not severance but immunity from that which spirit must redeem. Isolated unity, synthesis and unity, boundlessness and unity, eternity and unity. Oneness, 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 oneness. Isolated unity, isolated unity, isolated unity, isolated unity. I am that and that I am. I am that and that I am. I am that and that I am. I am that
Michael, just to let people know, I did put the YouTube link for that piece in the chat and the YouTube link to the Virgo oratorio playlist in the chat for them.
I hope you were able to hear it, because I discovered that I could not check with you without interrupting the flow.
It came
So,
through very nicely.
okay, well, that's, I'll do a meltdown of relief right here. Thank you. Thank you, Joe and Mikhail. Well, look, like I say, if this kind of thing works out, I have lots of songs to illustrate my point in various classes and so forth. And then there's all those Leo songs, of course, so you should be able to find them. Well, okay, friends, I want to close here now in this partial meditation, partial lecture. I would say, except in the great Mahamaya, and that's the finite universe in which we live, I would say, do not put your deepest faith in objectivity. In objectivity, as fascinating as the garment of God may be, we do have to study the garment of God, absolutely, in the great Mahamaya, but your deepest faith is in something else. And I think in the integration formula for the fifth ray, it's a wonderful formula, and I think it repays very close study, which I'm not going to do with you right now. But I do have it on Makara, kind of a video commentary study of all of those integration formulas. Your goal, on the other hand, is not to get lost in the garment of God. But I was just thinking, what would we do if we didn't have a Jonas Salk or an Einstein or, I don't know, the great a Pasteur, the great discoverers of the workings of the garment of God. We absolutely need it in our finite, Mahamayavic universe, but there's always going to be an exception here. Your goal is, now pay attention here, and I will pay attention too. Your goal is to realize yourself as the one who wears the garment. Your goal is to realize yourself as the one who wears the garment. That's such a different kind of registration in consciousness. And until we know what we're talking about, we're just talking words. We might say from the deepest subjective perspective. Now in this course, we're interested in subjectivity, the real thing. We might say I use the figure 8 for I wear the cyclic Mahamaya. It's like, the garment of God. I put on the universe. I, the one who is to be known, the universal logos, become the multifarious universe. I wear it. I wear the universe. Of course, we know there are needs, crying needs. In Mahamaya, we don't ignore them. We concentrate deeply upon them so we can bring out the right relationships between those, among those crying needs. But realizing that one is essentially not the appearances within the Mahamaya, although in a way, of course, we're all things, but I'm talking about like, well, here I am, I look in the mirror, I see this, I have this body, all that kind of stuff, that we are essentially not the appearances within the Mahamaya. That will help us meet those crying needs, often crying needs, more perfectly. I guess we have to live in two worlds simultaneously. The world of objectivity and the world of subjectivity, the world of finitude and the world of eventual universe transcending infinitude. We have to take care of business in the Mahamaya. Alice Bailey had 3 kids. She had to watch over them. She had to raise them, do all the housework too, and take the pressure of the Tibetans' dictation on top of it all. She had to do it. And she was very heroic and very brave, and her first-ray personality and first-ray mind helped her get through what would normally crush many of us. But that's it. As you go along, you get stronger, and you can handle more in a shorter period of time than the average person, and it doesn't flatten you. You just don't become prostrate flat on the floor with the demands. When you think about what Master DK has to handle, what Master K.H., Master Moria has to handle. When you think about what the Christ is anticipating and has to handle, it's just, overwhelming. But they have somehow managed to live in the world of objectivity and the world of subjectivity simultaneously. And that would be a great skill for all of us to develop. And we will develop it. There's some rough going as we try to develop it, okay? But we will get there, as we ever have. Every unit in the great divisibility of any universe has gotten there. There are no leftovers. You may have been bad, done some awful things, but you're not left out of the ultimate reality. After much suffering has rectified you and brought you home to the one true identity in cosmos. And this goes for the worst of them. And who are they but we? Our identity is divided equally among all divisibilities, particularities, apparently isolated units. It's one identity that is underneath all of them. And we are it. Okay. That's probably all I have to say right now. Another hour or so, we'll be looking at something very down to earth, the famine, the famines that have occurred throughout the millennia, probably so many of them that we have no idea. But it's a very gaunt thing to see these people who look more like skeletons than human beings. So many children, and not just children, but all kinds of people. We'll take a short look at that and try to be with them in these arid regions and the sub-Saharan regions and probably more places than we know. We'll see if we can lend an esoteric hand to those situations and maybe ward off the crises that are looming with regard to malnutrition and famine and all those things that want to take us out of the body and make the incarnation pretty futile. We'll work on that. It's a broadcast. I do think it's a broadcast. Yeah, I do believe it is. Not a Zoom cast like this one. Are there any questions or thoughts that you have or want to share?
Michael.
Yeah, Michael.
Hi. So I know that I think Heike wrote something earlier. I crashed, so if she wants to repost anybody that posted anything earlier.
Who is
I
that?
could read Heike's.
Okay.
She, in German, we don't use das Sein or sein, like being there, in contrary to here. In contrary to here, it would be dort sein. The
Dort
das
sein.
sein is, yeah, it's more like
There.
beingness.
Okay. Well, you're the one who knows, Heike. I'm just making things up from a little German that I had to take to sing 19th century German. So excuse my ignorance on these points, but the idea, Heidegger's particular term is called Dasein, however we want to translate it. It's a term that he popularized and in his philosophy, and I don't even know the way the philosophy books translate it particularly. I'm just thinking of the esoteric implications and the fact that things are, if I can just say, they are here while not being there. And I know we can say, well, how can you have a here without a there? And I'm just saying that the here represents the intimacy of being what is presented, and the there puts some kind of gap between you and what is presented. That's the only point I wanted to get across. Thanks for the real thing, okay. Been a long time since I've spoken any German.
And then we have our and Veronica contribution.
Oh, yeah.
I try to obliviate my form, but a question persists, echoing through the ages. Who am I? You are form, I answer back. I need to chase you away. Yes, comes the answer, but who am I? You are form, I persist, answering back, go away. Form is organized matter. Who organized you? The soul, I answer, even more the spirit. Will you stay so low, comes the echoing voice. Do you really stop there? I am the planet and beyond. I am the planets that orbit the sun. I am the sun, and eventually I am the universe. And isn't all of this form? Came echoing the question back. Yes, it is, but it is higher form. It is spirit. Matter is spirit in its higher form, and spirit is matter in its lowest form. You are one, form and spirit together. You are nothing but the universe in a leaf that falls from a tree. You are that. You are one.
Yeah, it's a very nice, very poetic. I am looking for this something that is not form. And when we say that spirit is form, my view of it is that there is something that transcends the boundedness of form, and it's the same everywhere. I don't consider it a form for myself, anyway. I consider it the substratum of all form. And so in a sense, of course, all forms are it. But I look for something that has no boundaries, really, and therefore no particularities in it, and therefore nothing that we usually call form. I'll say that. And that's just my own way of looking at this issue. Yeah, it's Joan is saying, is it the divine? Yeah. Well, you know, we can give whatever word we want. It is, depends on your orientation. You might be religiously oriented or mathematically oriented or maybe somehow spiritually oriented without either of those. This is the hard one to grasp. But to me, all I can do is share what I think. Being that something which I consider not to be I consider it to be the substratum of all form and without cause, the causeless one, being that, which we are anyway, is what I'm driving at. I don't want to name it particularly, except I do. I call it being, the substratum, reality, you know. I can come up with a bunch of words, but what's important is the, I would call it the subjective inperience of that obliterative. See, it doesn't, basically what it does, it obliterates identification with particularity. And when you have identification with particularity, you say, oh, I'm that body, I'm that astral body, I'm that mental body, oh, I'm that personality. See, we're just always, even I'm that causal body. We're identifying with the vehicle. We're identifying with the part, and we're not looking at the sameness, which really is and consumes. It consumes in beingness all those parts. That's what I'm looking for. I'm just share with you, you know, everybody's got to have his or her own way to arrive at this. Form has boundaries. What I'm talking about does not. And then if we want to get back to it, probably our final word is from Blavatsky, the boundless, immutable principle. And she says a bit more about it, about that which you can't say anything about. But if you think about what boundlessness does to what we normally consider form, then I think all of us can experience some new revelations in this regard. So I'm not saying that you have to pursue any particular way. You'll find your way. Everybody does. I'm just sharing with you the way I have decided to proceed.
So So then I think Heiki's comment is the substratum then consists of every countless possibility of form, but is unformed.
Yes, a good way of saying it's unformed, and within it, the super universal substratum, out of that, which is basically the transcendent God, universe transcending God, all possibility is already inherent as absolute infinitude. And then comes the selection of that finite portion of what the substratum can produce, the super universal substratum. There's also an intra-universal substratum, and it is basically to be identified ultimately as infinite, but what it produces is bounded and finite. So, I don't know what business we have going beyond any universe, except if we want to find the transcendent universe transcending God, who is the substratum of absolute infinitude. That's where we have to go. But yes, I was basically agreeing with the premise. We are the one, and we are the nameless. I mean, I have a place where I kind of committed an ironic impermissibility, and I've got like 41 names for the nameless. You can sense the contradiction. But every one of those names has a little bit different angle on what the nameless one, including the words nameless one, really is. Probably the best thing is just to, not say anything, but I'm in the habit. And many of us are, I think. Yes, and someone says here, from X to everyone, some thoughts. Is it the essence which underlies, coheres all outer phenomena? Well, it certainly underlies, yes. And it is the synthesis of sameness which brings together all outer phenomena. It's maybe what the Buddha would call, since he was an experiencer, he would maybe call it suchness. He was very smart in how he used that kind of term. You don't want to get too specific about it, but everybody is just inclined to give names to the nameless, so that at least one can talk about something than which there is nothing else. So whatever works for you, whatever name or no name at all that works for you, you can utilize. Some days I'm very far from it. Other days, in the flip of the switch, suddenly there it is. So I'm looking for the consistency of the infusception of suchness, which underlies all perceptual, particularity. Why look for that? Well, the pragmatic part of it is that in the long run, it's going to make a better helper out of us if we can find that. Okay, looks like we're at the end. Yep.
Yeah, Anne says she thinks of it as a dissolving of form into absoluteness.
Ultimately, yeah. Ultimately, that's what's happened. Even the dissolving of absolute infinitude with its endless interactive particularities, beyond the range of all our thought, dissolves into the absoluteness which it essentially is. It's just that in absoluteness there is no number. And in absolute infinitude there is infinite number. So I think it's a good way, as you say, a good way to think about it. Look, find your own way, everybody. Find your own way. If you want, if you wish, if it's germane to you at this point of your experience in this universe, find your own way into the thing than which there is no other, or the no thing than which there is no other. Ultimately, the boundless, immutable principle. Yeah?
Yeah, we're good.
Whoop, 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 something happened.
We're all good.
I'm getting a big cloud sound from you, Michael. Like, or something happened. Anyway. Are we there?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just turned into a storm cloud, I guess.
Well, the thunder was raging. Okay, friends, so I'm going to try to make myself ready for something, much more apparently practical. And it'll be the broadcast. Yeah. At our usual go live link. I hope I can get over there and make it work. I switch computers for some of these things. So let's see if that's possible. And thank you for your presence and for thinking along with me and with everybody else. Thank you. And we'll carry it a little further. As I said, probably in speaking with Tuya, we may not have the vigil every night. We have to decide now when we will hold it. We've been having it like every night, and maybe that will not be the case, or maybe it will. We'll see what she thinks, and we'll get back to you on that. Okay, so from, yeah, there's the link in the chat. That's where we're going to go. So from Tuya and me and Mikhail and Joe and BL and Michael Stacy and Bob and all those who are really helping with the communications team, we wish you all the best, many, many blessings, lots of love. We wish you all good things. Okay, and I'm going to read your. I'll read your things that you've been sending to me and so forth, but I got to get ready right now. So, alrighty, we'll be back with you at the next occasion. Tomorrow is a treatise on cosmic fire. It's a Friday. In depth, that's a joke, but as much in depth as we can make it. And then we'll see about the vigil at night and how we continue that process. I don't know. It may be like twice a week or something like that. We'll see. There's a whole lot going on politically in the United States that we also have to deal with, because it sets an example for the world, and sometimes it's not a very good example at the present time. Alrighty. Lots of love to you all, and we'll be back with you. Okay? Bye for now.